Good evening, everyone. So, we are live on Instagram and we are live on Facebook and we are live on YouTube. Hi, everyone, and I hope you have a great evening. It's what day is it, by the way? It's Tuesday, 27th of April, and I hope you had a great evening. Again, today I had to do some work, so I couldn't do the live at 10. So I have to do it 1 hour later. Sorry. So this week is a bit kind of busy for me. We have an important workshop on Friday with all the senior management from the client attending, and we have to discuss kind of the process that we are planning and how we want to approach several work streams within the project. So it's still in the preparation phase, and the real kind of beginning of the project will be in like I think 3 or 4 weeks. Nevertheless, it's a very important preparation time. And yeah, that's why I'm very busy, because I have to do slides all day. Good. Today we are live on two platforms. So first of all, hi to all the Instagrammers, and finally it worked. We are back on YouTube live. So thank you also if you join on YouTube. As always, if you have any questions, then please write in the chat. I will do my content first, and after that, I will go into the chat questions and answer them. Yeah, so if you have any questions, as always, just write in the chat. And today, we have a very interesting topic. We will talk about 3 books that every management consultant has to read. Good, people are joining, and I think we are good to go. So, what are the 3 books that every management consultant has to read? In this video, I will talk about that. Hi everyone, my name is Johannes Niari and welcome to this channel. Welcome to Mastering Consulting. On this channel, I want to help you to learn the necessary skills to become very successful professionally in management consulting while simultaneously living a well-balanced private life. And today we have a great topic. We will talk about the 3 books that every management consultant has to read. And maybe as a backstory, so I receive so many messages, and also in chat, always people ask, like, what kind of books do we have to read if we want to become great in management consulting? And quite honestly, I mean, obviously, there are tons of books that you can read, but I try to narrow it down today to the 3 most important books, at least in my opinion. And as you probably know, so I love to read and I read a lot, and I started reading like 10 years ago. And this was kind of when I decided I want to become a management consultant, okay? And at that time, I got very interested in kind of personal development, but also a lot, obviously, the consulting industry. And I also read a lot of business books. And I have to say, if I have to narrow it down to one factor, so if I have to narrow my kind of success factor down to one factor, it would be my high amount of books that I read over the years. Okay, so on average, I would say that I read like 1 book per week. So this is, as I said, on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. As you probably know, I always read on the Kindle 1 book, and I also have a book on Audible, so an audiobook, because this allows me to use kind of times where I'm traveling. I use the time also to read books, and obviously listening to audiobooks is a lot faster than reading the books. Okay, so bottom line is that I, over the last 10 years, read tons or hundreds of books actually, and it was pretty hard to choose and pick the 3 most important books that I see for management consultants. But nevertheless, I gave it a shot, and let's see if you agree with me. Okay, so Book number one that I recommend and that every management consultant should read, in my opinion, are the two books from Ethan M. Razel, and it's one, The McKinsey Mind and The McKinsey Way. Yes, I know these are actually two books, but nevertheless, I think they are so similar that I kind of list them as one book. Okay, so The McKinsey Mind and The McKinsey Way. So why are those books so important and why are they so valuable for management consultants? Well, obviously, in this book, Ethan M. Razel talks about his own experience at McKinsey. So he was I think, senior associate back then, or even an engagement manager. I'm not sure about that. And he kind of talks about all the learnings that he acquired and that he had at McKinsey. And he summarized all of his learning as a kind of blueprint on how McKinsey approaches projects. And the one thing that I found to be very, very valuable was that they talk a lot about the problem solving process at McKinsey. And although, I mean, it's only one of it, or one possibility to solve problems, so one possible problem solving process, and there are many other problem solving processes. I found this to be very valuable because it was the first time that I actually started thinking about my problem solving. And throughout my career, and the longer I am in consulting, the more valuable it becomes to me to really have a structured way to solve and approach problems. Besides that, the book gives very detailed insights about very important consulting tools. So they have a chapter dedicated to conducting interviews, or for example, to conduct workshops, or for example, to conduct research. And especially as a young consultant, I found this to be very, very helpful because it's really a very direct guidance and a very practical guidance that you can easily apply in your daily work. So I would say the problem solving and the tips about the consulting tools were the things that helped me the most. So it's highly recommended to read the book. So book recommendation number one, McKinsey Mind and McKinsey Way from Ethan M. Razel. Book recommendation number two that every consultant has to read is The Aspiring Consultant by Moritz Dressel. And the interesting thing about this book is that it kind of guides you through the journey from I received an offer and I want to prepare for my consulting job, maybe an internship or a full-time position. So it guides you from the journey from preparing for the job to the exit. Okay, so it's designed and it's written along a consulting customer journey, so to say. And I found this to be very valuable because it gives you very practical things about how you can prepare for your consulting jobs. It also talks about very easy things like, okay, what kind of clothes do I have to buy as a management consultant? And then it guides you through your first week as a management consultant. So it talks about the onboarding week, for example. It talks about how to network within a firm. And then it also talks about kind of your project work. And here I think it gets very valuable because while McKinsey Way talks more about general concepts like problem solving and interviewing techniques and so on, The Aspiring Advisor is a book that also talks a lot about how to work in Excel, how to build presentations, how to do great storylines. And it also has a section that is dedicated to personal career advice. And I think that this is or for me, it was very valuable. And I still find something new there, like every other week when I grab the book and read in it. So it's still very valuable for me, and therefore it's highly recommended to get the book and read the book. Book number three that I recommend and that I ask or that I recommend to every management consultant that he or she should read is a book called Million Dollar Consulting by Alan Weiss. And this book is a bit different than the other books because the McKinsey Way, McKinsey Mind, and The Aspiring Advisor, these are two books that are really where the target group really are kind of management consultants, as we know from firms like McKinsey, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and the Big Four, for example. So really management consulting. Million Dollar Consultant is a bit different. So the book is more, so the target group of that book is more like solo entrepreneurs, solo consultants, and entrepreneurs. Okay, so it does not talk about how to behave within a consulting firm. It rather gives you tips about how to build your own consulting business. So the question is, why should you read it? Why is it valuable for you if you want to join a larger firm? And the answer is very simple. So the book talks a lot about things like positioning, how to acquire projects. It also talks about, for example, the differences between fixed salaries and fixed fees and variable fees. And I think this is just it kind of talks about management consulting from a different perspective. And I think this is very valuable, especially if you plan to become a project manager or even VP or partner someday, because then you have to start thinking as an entrepreneur from the very beginning. Okay, so it also talks about how to build a network, how to acquire new clients, how to do marketing. And I think it's also very important to understand that from a very or on a very early stage in your career path of management consulting. So this is book recommendation number 3, Million Dollar Consulting by Alan Weiss. So if you have any questions, then please write now in the chat and I will go through the questions in a second. But just to summarize, what are the 3 main book recommendations that I have for young consultants and that every management consultant should read? First of all, just to recap, it's The McKinsey Way and The McKinsey Mind by Ethan M. Razel, a very good book about problem solving and also about consulting tools like interviewing and so on. The second book is The Aspiring Advisor by Moritz Dressel, a great book that guides you through your journey as a management consultant. The third book is Million Dollar Consulting by Alan Weiss, because it teaches you how to think as like an entrepreneur in management consulting. Of course, I'm interested what other book recommendations you have, so please write in the comments. And also now if you're live in the chat, I will go through the questions now and I will cut the questions off from the YouTube video afterwards. So with that being said, if you're on YouTube, then thank you for watching, and please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and also leave a comment. And for all the others who are live now, I will now answer the questions. So with that being said, to YouTube, goodbye. Talk to you very soon. And I will now go through the questions. Good. Then I will start with all the Instagram questions. And by the way, to all the guys and girls who are watching on Instagram, if you're wondering why I don't look into the camera, the reason is that I have 2 cameras and I have to look to the YouTube camera because I will upload it afterwards, and I hope that's okay for you. Okay, so questions. Any books you recommend when you're already in consulting? I think if you are already in consulting, then it becomes more important to read more business oriented books. So for example, I mean, then it really depends on how to or on what kind of area you want to focus. I think if you talk about soft skills and organization, I mean, there are great books like 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss. Deep Work is a very good book about organization. The One Thing is a very good book about organization focus. If we talk about communication, it's, for example, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Also, The Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. I think it's very interesting. Also, starting with Why from Simon Sinek. So this is more the communication books that I recommend, or my favorite communication books. But then there are many other books. So I currently read How to Avoid the Climate Disaster by Bill Gates, obviously, because I mean, this is just a macro topic. But I also read very specific technical books about how to do turnaround projects, for example, or restructurings, because this is kind of important for me in my daily project work. Okay, so it highly depends what you want to learn. So if you have more specific questions, so if you're interested in a certain area, then just write it in the chat. Maybe I have some recommendations for you. But it highly depends. Hey, Mr. First Two, can you quickly go over again? Yes, I did. What about correct? And it cannot just not. Okay, to be honest, I haven't read it, but I will. So let me read it until next week, and then I will give you my feedback on Correct It. Okay. Sorry. Okay. There are. It came out in 2018. Okay. To be honest, I haven't read many books about management consulting in the last 2 years because I read all the books that were out like in 2016 when I prepared for my career. Okay, but very good recommendation. I will have a look at Correct It and give you my opinion on that at latest in 2 weeks. Okay. Good. Any more questions? Do you know about the minimum viable strategy approach that I've heard recently? So I don't know. Do you mean like minimum viable product strategy? So an MVP, so minimum viable product, is simply, I mean, just a very basic product type that you do kind of in a very quick way in order to kind of test your hypothesis. This is what an MVP is. I mean, if you talk about MVS, so minimum viable strategy, I haven't heard of it, but I will look it up. Viable strategy. Okay, so here it is. Minimum viable strategy addresses only the foundations like purpose, values, and a handful of priorities. The execution of the strategy is a continuous process of sensing and responding to change involving the whole workforce. Okay, so I haven't heard about the book, but it sounds interesting. But I would say, like, I mean, this also could be kind of a very trendy tagline for something that is already happening every day. Okay, so I mean, like, this is probably more applicable. I mean, as I just read out, so what the principle basically says is that you don't formulate a strategy for like 5 or 10 years and that you then follow kind of a linear execution plan. So that you rather, and this is how I understand minimum viable strategy, have a very kind of a sprint logic where you say, okay, you have a few weeks or month, at least a shorter time period where you only focus on important thing and adjust from time to time and in shorter periods. And I haven't read about that, but I think this makes a lot of sense, and I already see it like in my daily work as a management consultant. Okay, so everything is sprint based nowadays, and I mean the circles are just getting shorter. I mean it's kind of obvious because obviously technological development is accelerating. Then it's getting more and more complex, more and more kind of interdependent. If you want to learn more about that, I can highly recommend to read a recent book from Klaus Schwab, The Great Reset. There he talks a lot about how much more complex and the world becomes. So I think it's very kind of a natural reactions from companies that they also adjust their strategy in shorter time frames. Okay, so it's not like in the 80s where you had a kind of 10-year investment execution plan. Obviously, I think you need, especially if you're a large corporate, you need a kind of long-term planning. But if I talk about long-term planning, I talk about 4 years because that's also the average kind of time that a CEO is usually in a management position. Okay, so I think like 4 years is kind of the average time period that you have if you formulate a strategy. And the concept of minimum viable strategy to me sounds like a kind of natural reaction to the more complex and the fast environment that we or kind of speeding up environment that we are living in. So I haven't read the book. It seems to be a book, but it sounds very plausible to me. Good. Okay, Sonja, thank you for answering my question and sharing those recommendations. Please, can you post the ones you mentioned somewhere? Um, yes, I will. Can you, Sonja, write me a direct message that I don't forget it, and then I will send it to you. Any pointers for somebody not coming from one of the target MBA schools for getting a job at the MBBs? Okay, Nate. So if you, the question is, do you have an MBA? And if so, I mean, even if it's not from, Nate, maybe you can kind of elaborate on the kind of background that you have. So the question is, I mean, do you what kind of practical experience do you have, and what kind of academic background do you have? So if it's not a target MBA school, so maybe you can tell me what kind of background you have. But I think if you don't have the academical background to join MBB, then I think it's. I mean, you have two possibilities. I mean, you have to demonstrate the important skills in another way. Okay, so this could be, for example, that you have a very strong practical experience that you can kind of prove. So, for example, very good internships or very good activities in a community, for example, or what I did. So my big strength back then was that I was very, very active in consulting clubs. Okay, so this is what I did back then. And I also kind of founded my own consultancy during my studies. And I did like, I mean, honestly, I had one time, it was 1 year where I had like a job as a working student. I was an intern, and I had my own consultancy while being at the student club at the same time. So I kind of did four practical activities just like simultaneously while studying. Okay, so I really made sure, because I knew that my academic background is not the thing that will convince strategy consultancy. So I rather focused on practical experience. Okay, this is one way. The other way is that you try to network into the industry. Okay, so it's sometimes easier to get in the industry through a personal connect, and this includes also like career services. Okay, so if you meet someone from, for example, at a career fair from McKinsey, and you can convince the person that you are, I don't know, very outstanding despite weaknesses in your academics, and you convince them, then maybe you can hand in your application and they will consider it. Okay, so practical skills and networking would be the things that I recommend. Okay, Mital says, I started reading Pyramid Principle by Barbara Minto. Yeah, it's really helpful in consulting. Yes, it is. It's definitely one of the main books I would recommend in terms of communication. Okay, so the pyramid principle is a very common principle that we apply in management consulting. It's simply, I mean, it's also called top-down communication. So where you start with a summary first, and then you break it down like a pyramid into logical paths. And I think this is, I mean, this is, it's kind of basic. It's kind of, we apply it like on every slide. Okay, in every slide deck. This is part of our communication style. Yeah. So pyramid principle by Barbara Minto. She was also a former McKinsey consultant, by the way. Highly recommend Factfulness by Hans Rosling. Yes, me too. Vital says, could you also please suggest strategies on how to approach open innovation in traditional companies which are reluctant to change their processings? Wow. Very cool question. Okay, but this is a more complex one. How to approach open innovation in traditional companies. Okay, so the easiest way to approach open innovation, so the one thing that you have to achieve in a company is that you have a strong project sponsor. Okay, so this could be like someone in the board or a senior manager who kind of is a visionary guy. Okay, and you need to have at least one person as a sponsor. Okay, and this is a person that you can report to as a consultant, and this is also the person who's responsible for the budgets then. Okay, and then I mean what you have to do is to create a kind of separate unit. So I mean open innovation will definitely fail if you keep it within the existing structures. Okay, you have to create a kind of speedboat in order to get this innovation going. I mean, this is why so many companies, if they want to innovate, if that they kind of found an accelerator program or a company builder or I don't know, in VC, but it's very often a separate unit that or an innovation lab or something like that. And I mean, it's often a separate unit, even in a sometimes in a separate city. Okay, so very or many companies, for example, in Germany, like the big ones, um, even if their headquarters, for example, in Munich or in Düsseldorf or in any big city, they have a separate innovation hub in Berlin, for example. Okay, the reason is that they want to separate the innovation unit from the traditional business. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. You need to find a very strong project sponsor, so one in the senior management or management board, and then you have to kind of form a separate unit, and then of course you have to show results, okay? And you have to try to make it as tangible as possible, so that people understand or quickly see results. Otherwise they will cut your budget. So that's a short answer to a complex question. So Mital, if you have more questions about that, then let me know. Great. Thanks for your opinion. Yes, you're very welcome. Okay, Nate, I am in an EMBA now and coming from US military and undergrad liberal arts degree. 10 years of professional experience, six of that in market management and business development. Okay, and I assume that your EMBA is not at a target university, so probably no Ivy League, but another EMBA program. It's very difficult to answer that. I would say, I mean, have you contacted like a career service already from your university? So maybe they have experience about a placement at MBB. Otherwise, I would just apply or kind of get in contact to someone from the career service or from sorry from HR at MBB, and kind of, so maybe you can ask them to check your CV, or maybe you have a friend working at McKinsey or Bain or BCG. You can ask them to check your CV, because without seeing your detailed practical experience, it's very difficult to answer it. But I would say if you have like excellent grades in your EMBA program, I mean, then it's not too. I mean, let's be honest. Like I would say only 70-80% the most come from the real big target universities, and especially in the US, I know many people come from like Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, um, but I would say, I mean, not everyone comes from those schools, right? So depending on your on the kind of prestige of your university, it can also work. But it's very important that you then have excellent grades and very relevant and very good practical experience. That's still my recommendation. Hope this helps. Sorry, this is very difficult to give a good recommendation here. I'm getting more interested in consulting. As a last year psychology student, is cognitive psychology and human factors average French university sought after skill and good path in consulting. Okay, so the question is, as a psychology student, can you go into consulting? Yes, I would say yes, but it's easier if you go to a larger firm, and also you will be required to do an MBA at some point. Okay, but yes, of course, this can work. I mean, as always, it's important that you have like excellent grades, and if you have excellent grades and also can show like extracurricular commitment and have some practical experience, then it doesn't matter what your major was, to be honest. Okay, because I mean, let's be honest, management consulting is no rocket science. Okay, so most things that I know about management, I mean, I have a big background in business, but I could easily learn them on the job. Okay, obviously, if you want to do more detailed finance stuff, then it helps to have a finance background or business background. But in most cases, to be honest, you can learn most things on the fly. Okay, so I would say yes. If you studied psychology and you think about joining consulting industry, I mean, then start with an internship. Okay, try to get an internship somewhere. and see if you like it. But yes, I know many psychologists working in management consulting. Okay, Miral, you're very welcome. Okay. How to approach people in higher management like CXOs as a common individual to ask for some insights on the topic. Um, okay, so what you're basically asking is how to get contact to management boards to get insights from them. It's very difficult. Okay, so I mean, look, the point is if you want to network and if you want to get in touch with someone, you have to think about what value you can bring to them. Okay, because they are obviously not interested in any conversation with you if you don't bring any value to them. So think about how you can add value to them. So maybe you are kind of, I don't know, you know about some things that they don't know about. Um, I mean, whatever the reason is, you have to find. Sorry. So whatever the reason is, you have to find one so that they will have an interest to talk to you. Okay, and then I mean the easiest way is to look into your network or to look outside your network. So your inner circle, like people you directly know or people that you know through one or two contacts. This is the other opportunity, and you can look on LinkedIn. But it's very unlikely that people will answer you unless you ask a really smart question. Okay, some senior management people also like just to answer smart questions. Okay, good. Okay, guys, I'm running out of power here, so I have to close this round. Like for my master thesis, I need to deep dive open innovation reference supply mention. I have no idea how to approach anyone in internal instance. Okay, Mitta, then make a list of potential people that you want to contact. It's easier if they have to write a master thesis. So make a list of people and try, but make a large list and expect not more than 5% to answer you at all. And maybe of those 5%, 10% are willing to talk to you. Okay, so make a long list and try to get in touch with those people. And then you have to be persistent, okay? So that's what I would recommend. Good. Guys, I have to stop here because I'm running out of power. But thank you for your time. Thank you for all the questions. It was fun to me. It's now time to go to bed. I hope this brought value to you. As always, you're very welcome. So as always, on Instagram, please follow me, but you probably already do. So if you have any questions, then please, as always, write me a direct message and I will do the next live probably tomorrow, 10 p.m. So this is like the fixed time slot that I have for my lives. Otherwise, if I won't make it until 10, I will do it around 11, okay? So thank you on Instagram. Hope to talk to you tomorrow and on YouTube. Also, thank you for being with me. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please do. And with that being said, I wish you a great evening. It was such a pleasure for me, and talk to you tomorrow. Okay? Bye, guys.